All right, so are you ready to get into some really interesting stuff today?
Always.
Well, today we're diving deep into, this really lively discussion from Global Money Talk.
Okay.
Featuring Tai Wong.
Oh, yeah.
Who you might know is an independent proprietary trader, which basically means he trades with, the firm's money, not clients' money.
Oh, wow.
So higher stakes.
Higher stakes, yeah.
Higher potential rewards.
And he definitely makes some bold predictions.
He does, doesn't he?
Yeah.
So we're going to be covering a lot today. NVIDIA's earnings.
Okay.
The crazy crypto market.
Uh-huh.
Some really key economic indicators, things like jobless claims and home sales.
Right.
And then even Wong's thoughts on what a returning Trump administration could mean, especially for things like geopolitics and big tech.
Yeah, well, let's jump right in.
Let's do it.
All right.
Okay, first up, NVIDIA. So they absolutely smashed earnings and revenue expectations.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, and apparently the demand for their chips,
Okay.
especially from all these AI-hungry companies, is just like off the charts.
Oh, wow.
Even exceeding supply.
So it seems like, all this talk about how AI is going to change the world is finally starting to, actually happen.
Right.
This is a real sign that AI is becoming essential, not just some, futuristic idea.
Okay, yeah.
And for businesses in many sectors, it's NVIDIA's success that shows this.
Yeah, absolutely. But here's where it gets kind of strange.
Okay.
Despite all this incredible news, NVIDIA's stock price actually dipped a little bit. So what's the deal with that?
Well, sometimes it's like, imagine you're going out for an amazing meal, right? You're expecting the best food you've ever had.
Right.
But it turns out to be just pretty good.
Okay.
You're still satisfied, but there's this tiny part of you that's kind of disappointed.
Right.
Because your expectations were just so high.
Yeah, I get that.
It's kind of the same with stocks. You see, investors can set these super high expectations.
Right.
That even when a company, blows past its targets, it's still not quite enough to meet the hype.
So it's like the market is spoiled.
Yeah, exactly. It's a spoiled market. Investors are so used to these incredible gains that anything less than spectacular can trigger a sell-off.
Wow. Okay, so are you saying that sometimes exceeding expectations simply isn't enough?
Yeah, in the short term, absolutely. Especially with a company like NVIDIA, a high-growth company, even a small dip can make some investors decide to just take their profits and run.
Got it.
It's about managing those expectations.
Yeah. It's almost like it's not just about the numbers. It's about the, the psychology, like how those numbers measure up against, what people were expecting.
Right. Psychology plays a huge role.
Have you ever, experienced this yourself in your own investing?
Definitely. And it happens a lot, especially with the really high performing companies. It's a good reminder to kind of keep our expectations in check,
Absolutely. Okay, well, now on the other end of the spectrum, we have Bitcoin.
Oh, yeah.
Which has absolutely exploded, recently breaking through $98,000 and setting a new all-time high.
Wow.
And Tai Wong is actually predicting it could hit $100,000 soon.
Really?
Fueled in part by these massive investments from companies like MicroStrategy.
What? MicroStrategy?
Yeah, they put in something like $45 billion into Bitcoin.
Wow, $45 billion. That's insane.
Yeah.
But this brings up, another really interesting point, which is how political changes might affect the crypto market.
Okay.
Wong actually argues that, the current administration's policies are actually holding back crypto's growth and that a new administration could be much more favorable.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, he specifically mentioned how the current administration has been discouraging banks from lending to crypto businesses, which obviously limits their ability to grow.
So if you're thinking about investing in crypto, you've got to consider the political landscape as well.
Absolutely. I mean, that's a huge factor.
Yeah. Okay, now shifting gears a bit to some broader economic indicators.
All right.
The data we're seeing is kind of sending mixed signals.
Interesting.
Jobless claims are down to a 7-month low.
Okay.
Which usually means that, the labor market is strong.
Right.
But continuing claims, meaning the number of people who are still getting those unemployment benefits are actually rising.
Huh.
Which could mean that, it's harder for people to find new jobs.
Right.
Even though those layoffs are down.
Interesting. What about the housing market?
Yeah, the housing market, it feels like it's been struggling a bit.
Yeah.
Existing home sales are up just slightly, but they're still pretty low overall. Mostly, I think, because of high prices and those, like, stubbornly high mortgage rates.
Yeah, for sure. It's tough out there right now. So what does all of this actually mean for, like, our listeners? How might all this affect their job prospects or their ability to buy a home?
Right, exactly. Those are the real-world implications we want to understand.
For sure, because it's not just numbers on a screen. It's about, like, how it affects people's lives. And then on top of all that, the Fed, the Federal Reserve,
Right.
has this big decision coming up in December on whether to cut interest rates.
Okay.
Wong actually mentioned Lisa Cook, who's a newer member of the Federal Reserve Board.
Right.
And she seems to be taking kind of a centrist view, suggesting that rates are likely to come down, but, we're not sure exactly when or how quickly.
So it's like a bit of a nail-biter.
Exactly. Like the election next year could be a close call. Now, get ready for this. Wong is also worried about rising geopolitical tension, particularly in Europe.
Oh, okay.
And even more so if we get, a new Trump administration.
Okay, this is getting serious now. What makes him say that?
He mentioned something that really struck me. Norway and Sweden.
Okay.
They're actually issuing war pamphlets to their citizens.
What?
War pamphlets.
Wow.
Yeah, it seems like, there's this growing sense of unease in Europe about peace and security, especially with the possibility of, a new Trump administration and all this renewed tension with Russia.
Yeah, war pamphlets, that's definitely sending a pretty clear message.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you know what? Wong's actually drawing this historical parallel here, asking whether Trump will be more like Churchill or Chamberlain.
Oh, wow.
If there is a conflict, with Russia.
Oh, right.
He's also concerned about the potential economic fallout from all this tension.
Yeah, I bet.
He thinks the U.S. dollar and crude oil prices would probably benefit from all this, uncertainty.
Right.
But of course, there could be all sorts of other effects, too, less predictable ones as well.
Absolutely. So again, how might all of this affect, the listener? What could these global events mean for your investments or for the economy as a whole? This is complicated stuff.
Yeah.
But understanding how it all connects is so important.
It really is. I mean, it's all interconnected. All right, now let's wrap up this first part by talking about big tech.
Okay.
Which is facing some serious scrutiny these days.
Yeah, for sure.
The Department of Justice is actually pushing Google to sell off its Chrome browser.
Chrome.
Yeah.
Wow.
To address all those antitrust concerns.
That would be huge. I mean, how many people use Chrome every single day?
Right. Millions and millions.
Yeah.
And, Wong's take on this is that corporate America, especially big tech, has kind of alienated some of its political allies by, getting too involved in political issues.
Oh, okay, yeah.
He thinks they've pushed too far on things like social issues and might be losing support as a result.
So what do you think? Do you use Chrome?
I do, yeah.
How might that affect your experience online if they have to sell it?
Right. Well, it's definitely something to think about. And, it kind of highlights this broader trend of populism and how that might impact, like, how tech companies are regulated.
That's a good point.
This is a big issue, one that we actually had to unpack further in the next part. Welcome back. I hope you're ready for more because Wong has even more to say about what a new Trump administration might look like.
Oh, okay.
Especially when it comes to filling those key cabinet positions.
Right, yeah, like who's going to be in charge of what?
Exactly. It's all speculation, of course, based on his analysis. But it is fascinating to consider who might be, like, pulling the ledgers of power in the next few years.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Wong has some really interesting thoughts here.
Okay.
For example, he mentioned Howard Lutnick, the CEO of Cantor Fitzgerald.
Oh, yeah.
Apparently, Lutnick was hoping to become Treasury Secretary.
Okay.
But ended up as Commerce Secretary instead.
So maybe he got the consolation prize.
Maybe, but Wong actually thinks this could give Lutnick more influence over trade policy in the long run.
Oh, so perhaps like a strategic move by the administration.
Possibly. Now, for that coveted Treasury Secretary position, there are still a few names in the running. Wong mentioned Scott Bessent, who's a former trader at Soros Fund Management and a big Trump supporter,
Okay.
along with Kevin Warsh, who's a former Fed governor,
Right.
and Mark Rowan, who runs Apollo Global Management.
That's quite a diverse group. Does Wong have like a favorite for the job?
He's definitely in favor of Bessent.
Okay.
He argues that, the Treasury Secretary really needs to understand financial crises, like how to handle them. And he thinks Bessent's background as a trader gives him that experience, that crucial experience.
So someone who's like been in the trenches, battled through market turmoil firsthand.
Precisely.
Right.
Wong even compared this to the 2008 financial crisis, suggesting that, Hank Paulson,
Oh, yeah.
who was Treasury Secretary at the time,
Right.
might have made some different decisions if he'd come from a, trading background instead of banking.
That's an interesting thought, how someone like professional background can really shape their decisions in those high-pressure situations.
Absolutely. It makes you wonder, like, maybe there should be some kind of requirement for, hands-on market experience for a role that important.
Right. Yeah, that's a really interesting point.
So Wong also thinks war should be a decent choice,
Okay.
given his experience as a Fed governor
Mm-hmm.
and his connections in the financial world.
Right.
But he's not so keen on Rowan. He thinks Rowan's background, in private equity,
Yeah.
might not have prepared him for the, unique challenges of managing the U.S. Treasury.
So Besant's the top pick, with Warsh as a solid second choice.
That's how I see it. Now, let's get back to that Department of Justice case against Google.
Okay.
Wong sees this as part of a bigger shift, in the relationship between corporate America and the Republican Party.
Right. He's arguing that companies, especially those in big tech,
Yeah,
have alienated that populist wing of the party
exactly.
by getting too involved in political issues.
He specifically pointed to things like Disney's opposition to the transgender bathroom ban in North Carolina,
Oh, yeah.
and that decision to move the All-Star game from Georgia
Right.
because of those changes to the voting laws. These actions, even though they might be well-intentioned,
Right.
ended up creating this, rift with a lot of the Republican base.
So it's a classic case of unintended consequences.
Absolutely. And now, according to Wong, these companies are finding themselves without the political allies they once had.
Which could leave them more vulnerable to, stricter regulations and antitrust actions.
Right. It's a cautionary tale about the potential downsides of corporate political activism.
Yeah, it makes you think about, the role of corporations in politics.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what's appropriate?
Yeah.
How do you balance those business interests with the concerns of the public?
It's tough.
Yeah, those are big questions.
Big questions with no easy answers.
Absolutely.
They really are, and they're questions we need to be asking as we, try to navigate this kind of evolving landscape.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Tai Wong's, insights,
Yeah.
it seems like we're in for some pretty interesting times.
Yeah.
Both, economically and politically.
Definitely. I mean, everything from that spoiled market reaction to NVIDIA's earnings
Right.
to the potential impact of a new administration on, crypto, to all those geopolitical uncertainties.
Right.
Especially in Europe. There's a lot to watch.
And let's not forget that, that shifting dynamic between, like, corporate America and the government, especially when it comes to big tech.
Oh, yeah. That's huge.
Wong's observations about, corporate political activism and the potential, fallout from that are
Yeah.
pretty thought-provoking.
Yeah, they really are. It makes you wonder if, maybe some companies have kind of overplayed their hand
Right.
in the political arena.
Yeah.
And if maybe a course correction is needed,
Right.
focusing more on, business and leaving the politics to the politicians might be, a smarter move in the long run.
Yeah, it's a debate worth having, for sure.
For sure.
How do you strike that right balance between, like, corporate influence and the public interest?
Right.
It's a tough one.
It's a tough one. So, as we're all trying to navigate these, complex and interconnected challenges,
Yeah.
what are some key takeaways for our listeners?
Right. What can people do to, be more prepared?
Well, I think, first of all, just, be aware that there's always the potential for market surprises, even when, companies are, doing incredibly well.
Right. Don't get caught up in the hype.
Exactly. Don't get caught up in the hype. And always, think about the bigger picture, like the economic and political landscape when you're making your investment decisions.
That's great advice. What else?
Well, be mindful of, how political changes can affect different types of investments, whether it's, crypto or tech stocks or even just the dollar.
Right.
Elections have consequences.
Yeah.
And it's important to, consider those when you're planning your finances.
Makes sense. Anything else?
Stay informed about what's happening globally.
Yeah.
And think about how those events might, affect the economy. What happens in Europe, for example,
Right.
can impact, markets and investments everywhere.
Right. Those are excellent points. Okay, so to kind of sum it all up, here's a final question for our listeners to, ponder.
Okay.
What steps can you take today to be more, resilient in the face of all this uncertainty?
Mm-hmm.
Is it diversifying your portfolio?
Yeah.
Staying up to date on the news? Or maybe even just, taking a fresh look at your whole approach to investing?
Right. I mean, there's no one right answer, but, if you take some time to, really think about these things.
Yeah.
And make some, proactive decisions, you can position yourself to really navigate all these challenges and opportunities that are, coming our way.
Well said. Thanks for joining us on this, deep dive into the world of, finance, geopolitics, and big tech.
It's been fun.
We'll be back soon with another fascinating exploration of all the forces that are shaping our world.
Looking forward to it.
Until then, stay curious.
$35.